Well, hello. We're going to have a little Q&A because a friend wrote me some questions about the propertarians' proposed solutions to the problems plaguing our nation. So, first she writes here an interesting thing about the video is that what the red-blue states would look like and the overlap and similarity. Red was projected to maintain Social Security and some sort of universal health care. Okay, she says. Anyway, I'll speak to that. I wasn't aware about a plan to retain any universal health care, but definitely the people that would be in the red states would probably maintain Social Security because they're used to it now. Maybe they would never have adopted it if they had kept their mores, but given that they're now addicted, they'll probably find a way to carry it forward. Next page of questions here. A different tax structure was proposed, and she talks about this. I'm just going to leave this on the screen on the left or the right. Okay, so yeah, there's different tax. They're going to basically, the propertarian idea is to outlaw the parasitism. So the financial structure will be reformed so that people aren't using the state or the government to parasitize off one another, and they'll try and find fair ways to doing things where people are paying for what they get, for what they want, and not being forced to subsidize especially organized crime like we are now with our bought and sold political system. So yes, they are going to get the ability for the corporations to write the laws and then use them to profit off of us. That's going to be done away with in the red states, and it's a genius plan, actually. You mentioned here also about college being partly financed by society. I think you misread that. It's not so much that college will be financed by society, although student loans will only be possible for the fields that can help the student pay back the cost of the loan. So there'll be no more student loans for gender studies and these other worthless degrees, fake science that have been impoverishing our young people as well as burying them in propaganda. A brilliant idea of theirs about the student loans is that instead of the students taking them out, because students aren't that wise yet in the world, instead of them taking them out, the universities and colleges would have to take out the loan, and they would have to be responsible for it getting repaid. So if they loan money to a student to learn some useless thing and that student ends up in debt working at Starbucks, well, the university and college is on the hook for the loan, and this will quickly give them an incentive structure to clean up their corrupt act, because what they're doing to students now, putting them into debt slavery for worthless degrees, that is a huge and terrible crime. And I'm glad you say you're in favor of bringing back manufacturing to the United States. Yes, manufacturing is a high multiplier kind of business, and we want those we want the high multipliers. We need to be the people that are getting things done in the world. We don't want to be just picking up the scraps from the table by running a service economy. Another thing you mentioned here is reducing corruption. Yes, so the propertarians are very aware of the corruption problem and the need to reduce it. And their whole legal system is designed to be bulletproof against corruption. And corruption and parasitism are actually almost synonyms. And so when you say reduce corruption, we need to reduce it, and And corruption will be reduced if we reduce parasitism. So we've suffered from terrible problems with elite parasitism right now, where the people who've gotten direct control of the levers of power are just using them to bleed us like they're vampires or something. And then we have corruption also. The tolerance for corruption, if you look at a corruption map around the world, is highly variable around the world. And really, the only place where corruption isn't celebrated as a cool thing, it's like, yeah, you cheated them, man. Instead of like that, that's how it is in most of the world. If someone pulls off a corrupt trick and gets money from it, they get status from it. But only in the West has that been suppressed. And that's one advantage we'll have by selecting for people who don't want to be corrupt. The people who want to be corrupt will not be welcome to stay, and they will not be welcome to multiply in the red states. Okay, next page of questions here, or comments. You say, the biggest difference between red and blue, at least on the surface, seemed to be your anti-immigrant obsession, kicking out all the immigrants and forbidding legal immigration. Bingo. So you have hit it on the nail, and you call it an obsession. And I get it, because it does seem like it's irrational. And if everybody's really the same and everybody's really equal and people are interchangeable, then why would one mind an immigrant? I mean, if we're all the same. But what if that isn't true? What if that isn't true? What if we aren't all the same? In other videos that I put up and links, you'll see that the propertarians are aware of what we call HBD, human biodiversity. And they're aware of how evolution, do you believe in the theory of evolution? Evolution shaped us. We've been through a genetic meat grinder to get where we are today. And we people of the West, the people of Northwestern Europe, have been through a particular meat grinder that, for example, made us the least corrupt civilizations in the history of man. So we're not into corruption because it was bred out of us. It was bred out of us by the particular things we went through. Other parts of the world, like the Middle East, are all about profiting through corruption. Historically, I mean, they evolved where that was a successful strategy. And that's been a successful strategy inside India and Africa and all the rest of the world. So when we bring people in who haven't been through the meat grinder to make them not, anyway, they haven't been selected against corruption, we end up with high corruption people coming here. And when the high corruption people come here, they bring their corruption with them because it's in their strategy. It's in their evolutionary strategy. And that's why we have to be careful of immigration. Not because all immigrants are corrupt. No, not all are corrupt. There are some great people in every group, but the people are the product of their evolution, and they bring they're evolved for a certain kind of culture. So they will be best in their culture and not coming to ours and changing it. So yes, the red state people are aware of this. They're what we call race realists, meaning they're aware of, and it really isn't a race thing, but it's being realistic about what kind of environment someone is optimized for, and saying if they want to come be a guest in my country, they have to live by the house rules. They can't come to my country and bring their rules. And yet what we have doing is we've been bringing immigrants who want to bring their rules, and now they want to impose their rules on us. And that is discivilizational. That will crash and burn our civilization. So, yes, the red states, the red areas, whatever you want to call them, after the separation, will be very wary of immigrants, and they'll reassert a fundamental right that we had in America, which is the right of association, where we aren't going to be forced to associate anymore with people that we don't want to have to be around. I mean, an example. Okay, now maybe you're going to call me a racist, but I'm here in Goleta now, and almost everywhere that I see trash, I see the Modelo bottles. So I call them the Modelo people. The Modelo people don't pick up their stuff. They leave their trash, especially Modelo bottles. Now, why is that? I don't know. Actually, that's a whole other topic about the West. We invest in commons, and we make the best commons on earth. So when you visit a Swiss village, you will not believe the beauty. But we create beautiful common spaces, and we invest energy in common spaces in a way that the other people on earth don't. They don't create commons. They might create their walled area, their little thing inside the wall where they can have their thing, but they aren't optimized to create commons. And partly that's another whole topic for another video, but it ties in here. That is, there is a what we call a corruption poverty spiral. So corruption leads to poverty, which leads to more corruption, and it's a downward spiral. It's very hard to break out of it, and most of the world is stuck in corruption poverty spirals. And if we bring in too many corrupt people or poverty people, we will get into that trap of a corruption poverty spiral, and we'll lose the having gotten out of that trap, which we had done in the West. And we got out of it via a very difficult process of lots of people dying. So we can't immediately turn a switch and reverse that corruption poverty spiral everywhere on the earth. But if we can make one place on earth, or examples where we're proving it can happen, other people can copy that other places. Let them copy it. But we can't bring all the corrupt and poverty-stricken people on earth here and expect them to magically change. Because really it isn't a magical change thing, it's variation and selection. And it takes generations of it's great to have a goal of a smaller welfare state and lower taxes, but somebody has to do the budget and figure out what level of support society is going to provide. Right, that's huge, and that's where the red and the blue areas have very different ideas. So the red areas are still going to have a social safety net, but they want to extend that social safety net the way it naturally works, which is they don't mind supporting their own, but people don't like supporting others, especially others who are hostile to them and hate them. So as the self-sorting of the country continues, these groups, these areas the red areas will become more homogenous, and they'll be more with people that they like to live with and that they're willing to support, and and that way there'll be a lot less disharmony. It's fine to support. It's easy for me to want to, as a Christian, it's easy for me to want to support other Christians. But it's not so easy for me to want to support a Muslim who I know enslaved my ancestors and wants me dead and burns down my cathedrals. It's much harder for me to want to support them. So the Muslims need to have their Muslim area where they can take care of each other, and similarly with the other ways that people divide. This idea of the multicultural support system, it's not going to work. We can see it's leading to a lot of disharmony and basically almost war. So, and we are coming to war. It will end in war. So I'll just say that much for now, but we have to support our less able members, but also realize that a strategy of the West, the reason we in the West and the reason the people in the Far East, Northeast, the Chinese basically, and that kind of people, the reason that we have our higher IQs on average is that we selected for it. We had to select for the more capable. You have to be more capable in order to reproduce, and that's how you build. That's how you create an upward spiral. We need smarter people, always smarter people, and it's sad that yes, people get left behind, and that can be done gently, but we can't have the people who are incapable reproducing and using up all of the surplus, or they drag the civilization down into poverty. We get that poverty corruption spiral. Okay, so next one we have a surprising thing was the very high level of centralized government control of finances. Okay, you mentioned healthcare, college tuition, pensions, number of other payments are handled, okay, by a sort of debit card, which sounds kind of like magic tricks. And that you love this idea. Yeah, everyone would love. Wouldn't you love a credit card that you could spend with and you didn't have to pay off? Sure, everyone wants free money. But they aren't really proposing that because it isn't possible to have free money. But the big, huge reform here is eliminating the parasitic financial system we have now, which is just totally unnecessarily charging us interest on new money that comes into creation, and they charge us interest on it. And that is central banking. And that is a trick that the parasitic elite got in place. And they've used it to destroy our way of life. If you knew the true story of central banking and the way those central bankers used it to create the world wars and all the great wars, and how they profit by wars, and how the Middle Eastern nightmare wars of the last 20 years were manipulated by these people, you too would want to be free of it. So it turns out that we'll get a huge peace dividend when we stop that parasitism. And the Treasury will be able to take on some of those jobs, like the mortgage loans and the auto loans, according to the propertarians, can be issued by the Treasury, and they can be zero interest loans, so people can pay off their house in 10 years or less, and they can pay off their cars, and they won't have this crazy interest. And basically usury will be outlawed, because usury is a form of parasitism. So all the parasitic things the parasitic elite is doing to us now will be eliminated and under this system, and thus we will have a much higher quality of life with a lower cost. It's estimated that a normal person will only have to work 4 or 5 hours a day, and that'll be only one money maker in the family. You won't need a 2-income household. Things will be really idyllic and will get better. But to do it, we have to keep getting smarter. We have to be conscientious. We have to be decent people. So that's where the red areas are going to be trying to select for that. They're not going to want to carry large numbers of criminals and people who are negative, who through their actions show that they are not good for the society. I hope I answered your questions. Thank you for them. This was really fun. And yes, corporate money will be totally out of politics. Oh yeah, level of government control. So speaking of that, you mentioned level of government control. Well, definitely government control is a terrible thing when the government is full of people who hate you. And that's what we have right now. We have a government that's full of people who hate us. They hate us. They want us dead. Us being people like me, and maybe people like you, and maybe people like your son. So, but a government that wants our way of life to continue and our people to continue and really cares about that, that kind of government, I'm okay with it having some power over things like money creation, that if they fall in the hands of private parasitic elites who hate us, it really works out badly. All right, well, thank you for the questions. I hope I've answered them or at least gotten somewhere closer.